Good afternoon, panelists. Thank you for joining us. And again, welcome to the BW Legal World Law School Ranking and Legal Summit. Before we begin, let me give you a precursor to what this session is about. This session will explore the transition from law school to law firm. Offline, a lot of students have been asking questions. I'm not sure if they'll be asking right now. Some of them have gone. But they've parked their questions with me, so I'll try to take as many with this panel. And we'd really like to get to the bottom of the debate today has been whether law institutes should be held accountable for producing students who are ready for the industry on day one. And some of our panelists before have shared their points that, they expect the students to have come from the institutes with certain amount of efficacy and communication skills or drafting, etc. Now, on the other hand, are the institutes who say that where is the industry? The industry intervention has been missing when these students were being nurtured by these institutes. So, Pooja, let me come back to you with that context. As a law firm managing partner, what is it that you look for in a student joining you on day one, on a mark or a milestone of 6 months, and then 1 year?
Thanks. Thank you so much, Ashima, for inviting me. Now, I'm going to echo a lot of thoughts which have already been said in the earlier panels, but let me start by saying that at least I don't expect the students to be industry ready or ready-made lawyers at day one then when they come to us. That didn't happen when we were studying and when we joined, and that's not going to happen. A lot of what we do is very experiential. It's what we learn on the job. And really my expectation from the associates who join on day one is really, I just give them one advice: absorb everything. Be open to learning. A lot of times, the students come to us or the associates come to us expecting that on day one, they'll suddenly start arguing great matters or they'll be put into, a very important strategic M&A, but that's not how it works. I think first 6 months to 1 year, you need to be like a sponge. You need to be able to read a lot, just watch how your mentors and how your seniors are conducting matters. They need to be open to learning, and I think that is really the biggest expectation that I have, is be open to learning and be open to experimenting with different things, and that's really what I would expect. In terms of choosing a specialization, and I just want to weigh in on this because this is also something which was discussed earlier. I also personally think that it's good for the first six months to 1 year for associates to just maybe spend time with different teams and see what they really want to do, what is their interest level before actually picking up a specialization. And lastly, I think one other thing you mentioned about, day one, what really happens. And like I said, nothing really happens on day one. Most of the students would come when they join as an associate, and a lot of time is spent, the first initial 4 to 5 days is spent just on orientation. It's spent on learning the systems. It's spent on some very, very basic things. We think that the students would know, but they don't really know. A lot of issues regarding, let's say, ethics. And I'll give a very simple example about insider trading. Yeah. A lot of the students don't know how insider trading works, and when you come to a law firm, how they need to protect the confidentiality of the matters, how they need to conduct themselves when it comes to trading. And I think these are some of the things that a law firm must focus on in the first few days, just to explain some of the very basic things on how systems work, how processes work, how procedures work, what is the expectation from them in terms of ethics, what is the expectation of the team from them, in the next 6 to 1 year. So 6 months to 1 year.
Right. Pooja, so let me go back a bit and ask, when you're evaluating students or you're going for recruitments, what is it that you want to see in a student that you'd see that, okay, this is somebody we want to bring back to the firm? And then what's your plan for them going forward for the 1 year? That how do you assess them in your firm that they make the cut for the work that you have for them?
The two basic things that I look at is drive and ambition. because it's a very tough profession. We as lawyers, we spend a lot of our time on the job, on work, and if you don't have the drive and ambition to do it, it's not a job that you can do half-heartedly.
Right.
I think that's the first thing that I really look for, and second is how open they are to learn. Yeah. And these are the two things, primary things that I assess, because everything else you can learn, you can study, you can observe, you can absorb, but these two things are something which is primary for me.
Right. Thank you, Pooja. Ishani, let me come to you on that. You know, what is your expectation of students coming in, one? And in your experience, what are the challenges that they seem to be grappling with when they come to a firm? You know, we have these series and, you know, shows and Netflix and everything else that paint a very different picture of how the legal industry looks. Indian legal industries are now being represented by some of the web series that are coming on the horizon. But otherwise, I think Suits is a very famous series that people look at and think that everything, all sorts of transactions can happen by just looking at a paper and then it's done. So how do you find that in your experience?
So thank you for the question, Ashima. So as far as what we expect in Sagar, Chandra and Associates, I think one of the principles that we go by is that what law schools are teaching you is simply where to look, right? They're not teaching you what, they're teaching you where. And that is one of the skills that you're coming in with. Nobody's expecting you to be a fantastic lawyer and giving, you know, instant solutions on day one. We're looking at the right attitude. We're looking for a willingness to put your head down and work, and to be open to learning and, you know, behaving like a sponge and basically taking in everything that is being taught to you. Those are the basic you know, principles that we are looking at. We're looking at honesty, we're looking at transparency. That's all that, you know, like most managing partners of firms are looking at from an associate at day one. Now, as far as the challenges that, you know, lawyers tend to face when they make that transition from student to associate or from intern to associate, because most of you would have done internships and you're doing the work, the same work, right? You're doing the work that you have done in an internship. You're doing research, you're doing simple drafting. What is changing is the sense of responsibility that is attached to that work. As an intern, you're given a task and you're expected to return it, and you're then supposed to forget about it. But as an associate, what the firm is expecting from you is complete, you know, responsibility or ownership of that work from 0 to 100. So if your, you know, senior is giving you some work, the expectation is that there will be follow-up at your end to follow up with the senior to ensure that that work is eventually translated into real life. So if it's a draft, that it eventually gets filed. If it's a document, it eventually reaches the client. You know, those are the simple expectations, which is the major transition which I feel that, you know, students often have difficulty with when they transition from interns to associates. The second level of, you know, difficulty that I see with that students have is actually communicating with the client. So when you are progressing in a firm, you're given more responsibility and you have to communicate with the client. Often, you know, freshers are hesitant to do that because they don't know what is going to come at them, right? You're not supposed to have all the answers, but you should at least know what you are addressing a client with, right? You should do your basic homework, you should know your file completely, and you should be ready with the kind of questions that a client can pose you. And eventually it's all right to say that, no, I don't have all the answers and I need to reach out to my senior to give you an answer, but you have to be confident in dealing with the client, because at the end of the day, you are representing the firm. Another challenge that I see when you know, sort of within a year or two, when you actually have put in the work in the firm, the responsibility that you get, I see a lot of issues with delegation. I see a lot of issues with people then, you know, sort of having that team building and, sorry, no, that's fine. So I see issues with, you know, delegation and actually then leading a team because you're so used to doing the work on your own that you have to then learn to let go and train someone else to do it. So these are the challenges.
And those are issues that even sometimes you see senior partners have it, right? Delegation is a skill.
Absolutely. So we hear skills that are important so far is having the drive, crossing your T's and dotting your I's. That is, closing the loop every time, doing your follow-ups, and really. When you go out there representing a firm, acting part of the firm, and shouldering that accountability, which was absent when you were a student. Jyoti, coming to you, some of these aspects we've discussed, but what is your take on students really cultivating these things? For instance, I'll give you a small example that a lot of the times that even I receive emails for a job is by Mr., Miss / something as basic as that is missing. What in your experience when an intern or an associate comes in, what are the basics that they can get right to have a successful career in a firm? Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashima, for that question. When a fresher comes to a law firm, to my view, he comes with raw learning. And the very important aspect that he has to address is the adaptability. He has to get adapted to the practice area of the law firm, the environment of the law firm, and all the aspects. So therefore, there is, when comes up, there has to be some orientation. And there are actually orientation and induction programs where that particular person is introduced to, say, ERP system or the firm's rule system, rule books. Apart from that, certain firms are having even associate books because they are fresh to the firm. So they need to behave in a particular manner, in a disciplined manner. So therefore, there are associate rule book apart from the general rule books like filling of time sheets or attending the offices within time or leave. Apart from that, associates have separate rule books in many law firms. For example, if an associate comes up and gets an assignment and he is to deliver in certain timeline, during that period he gets a second assignment from a second leader, then that particular associate has to actually inform the first assigner that I have got this second assignment which has a certain urgent timelines, and therefore I will be having this particular assignment in between, so I will be responding to you in certain timelines, so that the first assigner will then accordingly map up his own requirements. So, as you said, your question was like, how to address and all. So he has to be oriented accordingly, and he must be adaptable. He should adapt to the ways of the firm. So that is my response on that.
Right. Thank you, Jyoti. Let me go around, in the interest of time and take some practical advice from the panel. And starting with you, Pooja, again. For a student coming in, what is something that you would advise in, as an add-on course maybe, or other things that are available to them? Like a lot of students now want to be mediators. There's this thing for the arbitration bar is here. So, people want to ask us whether we should do an LLM, we should do a mediator add-on course, we should do certain other negotiation skills or drafting skills add-on courses. In your opinion, is that something that's part of on-the-job training, or do you recommend certain level of proficiency on a tool or other such courses?
It really depends on the kind of work the associate is doing and what is the kind of work that he wants to do. It's always a good idea to constantly keep yourself updated and constantly upskill yourself. That I think goes without saying, whether you do it as part of the, a firm setup or you do it separately, upskilling is absolutely critical. I think 2 or 3 areas where I personally think the students will benefit a lot if they do these trainings is simple drafting. And a lot of law, in fact, we also do it as part of the orientation program as well, just to explain to them what is simple drafting, because end of the day, law is nothing but common sense and good communication skills.
So what does that really mean? Simple drafting means exactly
what?
Well,
we are very used to when you're in when you're studying, at least that used to be, at least when I was studying, the general impression was fill up the number, as many number of sheets you fill up, the more marks you will get, right? So people forget how to write simply.
Yeah.
And they forget how to write in short sentences, and they forget how to communicate very effectively. And you tend to use a lot of language which is very archaic, which is not really used in day-to-day communication. So that needs to be simplified. So doing something very simply and effectively is a skill set which I think they need to develop. The second thing is on numbers, a basic understanding of how finances work, and that's very critical for people who are doing either corporate law or commercial litigation or banking or finance or anything to do with commercial laws. It's important to have a very basic understanding of how balance sheets read. Just, what is meant by simple terms like a bit, things like that. That I think is important. And if you're not getting that knowledge within the law firm, it's good to do a course for upskilling yourself. And third, a very, very, very basic thing which are very close to my heart is how to do research. Because it's very easy now to, if I give a research proposition to someone in the office, I think the first instinct is to just go to Google and type it down and see what comes out. And that, according to me, is dangerous because it's not about getting the right or wrong answer. I think it stunts your ability to think.
Absolutely.
So I think that's something which I would recommend.
Thank you, Pooja. I'll take that to Ishani. Ishani, in terms of research skill building, we now have AI research tools coming up. Is there one tool that you would want to recommend to students that is being used by the firm? Or do you think we're still a few miles away from really, getting there in terms of tools coming up yet?
I think we're still a few miles away. I think everybody here would have used ChatGPT, and the kind of, outputs that come out. There have been cases where real life lawyers have used ChatGPT and
with fictitious names.
There have been fictitious cases with fictitious citations. So cross-check everything. There is nothing wrong with simplifying your work by using AI, but you have to cross-check everything. I think currently, the way we stand, you need to be good at, those all your online research tools like Manupatra and Link Law and anything, your SEC onlines. Those are the things that you need to be good at. AI is still on its way. Use it, enjoy it, but don't depend on it.
Thanks, Ishani. Jyoti, coming to you, there are a lot of avenues that are opening up for students other than core law at law firms. You have your, knowledge management, you have your PR and communication, you have possibly now your social media managers. What are your thoughts on some of those aspects that students can try as associates when they come into the firm?
Yes, they are actually important aspects. See, one of the important aspects for a career progression is to take up non-legal aspects as well, non-legal issues as well. For example, in our firm, there is a procurement committee, knowledge management committee, HR committee. So lawyers are being involved into that.
Right.
And so that gives them a different perspective. We have even a BD committee having lawyers into it. So that gives them an impetus to develop the interpersonal skills as well. So
Right.
that is that gives them a holistic development. So that is important aspect.
Right. Thank you, Jyoti. So I hope our students have some insights from our panel today. Thank you so much, panelists, for sharing your practical pieces of advice with them. It's been a wonderful having you.